The first time two fake HOA cops tried to force their way into my house, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so stupid it took my brain a second to catch up. You ever open your front door expecting maybe a neighbor with a package or a kid chasing a ball, and instead find two grown men dressed like discount mall security trying to act like they run your life? Yeah, that was my evening. The sun was dropping low over Meadow Creek, one of those neat little suburban neighborhoods where every lawn looks trimmed by the same nervous hand, and every house seems to have signed some quiet agreement not to stand out too much. Orange light was sliding across the roofs, turning the whole street soft and harmless. It looked peaceful. It usually was. And for me, that kind of peace was rare enough to feel borrowed. I was in my garage, working on my old motorcycle, wiping down chrome, checking bolts, enjoying the kind of silence that actually means something. That bite was my reset button. After long days dealing with the kind of people who lie for a living, hurt people for profit, or disappear when the truth gets too close, there was something honest about cold metal, a rag in my hand, and the smell of oil in the air. No noise, no politics, no paperwork. Just me, the machine, and 1 hour that belonged to nobody else. Then somebody started pounding on my front door like they were trying to collect a debt from God. Not knocking, pounding. Hard, sharp, impatient blows, one after another, the kind that carries attitude with it. I stood there for a second with a rag in my hand, and already knew this wasn't going to be good. Friendly people don't hit a front door like that. People with bad manners do. People with bad intentions do too. I walked through the house, glanced through the peephole, and saw two men on my porch wearing navy blue uniforms that looked like they'd been ordered from a Halloween catalog. Across their chests, stitched crooked like somebody's cousin did in a hurry, were the words Meadow Creek HOA Patrol. That alone nearly made me smile. The taller one was thin and twitchy, the kind of man who always looks like he's waiting for permission to panic. The shorter one was heavier to the shoulders, thick-necked, red-faced, and standing with that special kind of fake authority some men wear when they've never had any real kind. He had a name tag that said Miller. The tall one said Jenkins. I opened the door just enough to fill the gap on my body and said, "Can I help you?" Miller puffed up right away, like he'd been waiting all day to say his line. "Sir, we've received multiple complaints about unauthorized modifications to your property." I leaned one shoulder against the frame. "That's so." He gestured vaguely past me, toward the side of my house, specifically a non-compliant satellite dish. Now, I didn't own a satellite dish. Never had. So I just looked at him for a second, let the silence do some work, then said, "You've got the wrong house. I don't have a satellite dish." That should have ended it. If this had been a real mistake, that would have been the moment embarrassment showed up. A quick apology, maybe a glance at a clipboard, maybe some muttering about an address mix-up. But embarrassment never came. Miller's face tightened instead. "Don't play dumb with us," he snapped. That told me everything I needed to know. Jenkins shifted on his feet beside him, hand hovering near a plastic baton clipped to his belt. Cheap baton. Cheap uniform. Cheap confidence. The whole thing felt wrong in a way that was almost loud. I'd spent enough years reading body language to know when somebody was acting, and both of these men were acting badly. Miller was overplaying authority. Jenkins would meet my eyes. And neither one had the relaxed posture of someone who believes he belongs where he's standing. Miller took half a step forward. "We have the authority to inspect your property. We need to come inside." There it was. Not the dish. Not the complaint. Not the HOA. The house. I said very calm, "No, you don't. And no, you're not." He scoffed, gave me a crooked grin that was supposed to look fearless. "We are the enforcement arm of the Homeowners Association. The bylaws give us inspection authority. Are you going to cooperate? Or do we have to do this the hard way?" Now, you hear something like that, and part of you wants to laugh again, because the phrase enforcement arm of the Homeowners Association sounds like something a deeply lonely man made up in the shower. But another part of you starts measuring distance, angles, hands, weight shifts, exits. Because men pretending to be authority are often more dangerous than men with real authority. Real authority usually knows its limits. Fake authority almost never does. I studied them for maybe 2 seconds, maybe less. Miller was trying too hard. Jenkins was scared. Their uniforms were wrong in 10 little ways. The stitching was sloppy. The shoes weren't standard issue anything, and the IDs on their belts were facing backward, which told me they weren't used to wearing them. But the biggest tell was simpler than all that. They were here for my house, and they wanted inside fast. That meant this wasn't an HOA problem. This was a setup. Could have been a burglary. Could have been a probe. Could have been 2 idiots who thought a quiet neighborhood and a quiet homeowner made for easy money. I didn't know yet, but I knew enough. "Let me see your identification," I said. Something changed in my voice when I said it. Happens sometimes. The version of me my neighbors knew. The quiet guy on the corner who nodded, kept his lawn decent, and minded his business. That man stepped back. Another man stepped forward. Same face. Different weight behind the eyes. Miller caught it, but too late. He flashed a laminated card, so fast it was almost funny. Just a blur of plastic and bad decisions. Satisfied? "No," I said. He put his hand on the door and tried to push. That was the moment he stopped being a loud idiot on my porch and became an active threat at my threshold. There's a line, and he crossed it. Everything after that happened fast. I swung the door wide and let the sudden motion throw him off balance. He stumbled 1 step, surprised, and I was already moving, not angry, not rushed, just certain. Jenkins saw me turn toward him, and his hand dropped toward that bargain bin baton, like he thought maybe tonight he'd become an action hero. He didn't even get his fingers around it. I caught his wrist, turned it, and pinned him hard against the siding before he could process what was happening. He yelped. Not a tough guy grunt, not some movie sound, just a plain human noise that said pain had arrived early and uninvited. The baton hit the porch and bounced once. Miller tried to recover, but panic had already gotten into him. He reached for his own baton, slower than he probably believed he was moving. I hit his shoulder just hard enough to kill the arm, turned him, took his balance, and folded him forward. In another second, both men were controlled, disarmed, and making the kind of noises men make when their confidence leaves before they do. You'd be amazed how fast swagger evaporates when consequences finally show up. I took the cheap zip ties off Miller's own belt and used them on both of them. That part would have been satisfying even if the rest of the evening hadn't been. Miller was breathing hard now, face pale, voice gone thin around the edges. Jenkins looked like he wanted to crawl out of his own skin. I leaned close enough for them to hear me clearly and said, "You have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you use it." And right there, right on my porch, both of them froze. See, that line hit them different. Not because of the words, because of how I said them. There's a tone that comes from years of doing a thing for real, and no costume in the world can fake it. Miller swallowed. Who? Who are you? That question always sounds different when fear asks it. I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my wallet, flipped it open, and held it where both of them could see. Badge. Credentials. No drama. No flourish. Just fact. Special Agent Marcus Thorne. I said, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I let that sit there for a second. Then I added, and right now you're under arrest for impersonating officers, attempted unlawful entry, and assault. I watched the color drain from Miller's face. So fast, it was almost impressive. Jenkins shut his eyes for one miserable second, like maybe if he squeezed hard enough, he could wake up in a different life, one where he'd chosen literally any other house in America. That was the twist, I guess. To them, I'd been the easy target. Quiet house, quiet guy, no obvious family traffic, no dog, no noise, the kind of place men like that assume is soft. But the truth, and life teaches us over and over if you're paying attention, is that the quiet ones are not always harmless. Sometimes they're quiet because they've already seen what noise leads to. By then, the silent alarm had already done its job. I tripped at the second Miller pushed the door, more from habit than thought. A minute later, I heard sirens building in the distance, coming fast. And that's when the neighborhood started waking up. Curtains moved first, then front doors cracked open. Then faces appeared in windows, on porches, at the edge of driveways. Meadow Creek was not the kind of place where people expected to see two fake HOA officers zip-tied on a porch while the guy from the corner house stood over them in jeans and a gray t-shirt looking like he'd just taken the trash out. A couple neighbors gave me those wide-eyed looks people get when a puzzle piece suddenly flips and shows a different picture on the back. They didn't know who I was exactly, but they knew I wasn't just a guy who waved once a week and kept to himself anymore. The local police rolled up quick. One cruiser, then another. Officer stepped out ready, then slowed the second they saw me. One of them recognized me right away. Agent Thorne. "Evening," I said. The explanation was brief. It didn't need to be long. Two men in fake uniforms attempted forced entry, physical aggression, probable intent beyond the story they came with. The officers took statements, read them their rights properly this time, and hauled both men away looking a whole lot less official than they had 15 minutes earlier. Turns out later, they'd been running the same scam in nearby neighborhoods. Fake compliance visits, fake inspections, fake authority, looking for older residents, people living alone, anybody likely to get rattled and step aside. Once inside, they'd steal what they could or come back later with better information. Predators love uniforms. Doesn't matter whether it's a badge, a vest, or a clipboard. Give weak men a costume, and they start thinking they're entitled to doors that were never open to them. That part stayed with me more than the fight did. Because the truth is, the job teaches you a lot about violence, deception, systems, all of it. But one of the ugliest lessons is how often evil arrives wearing something familiar. It doesn't always kick the door in. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it cites policy. Sometimes it says it's here for your own good. And if you're tired or trusting or just raised to be polite, you might let it one step too far into your life. That night, after the cruisers left and the street settled back down, I stood on my porch with a glass of water and listened to the neighborhood exhale. You could feel the adrenaline fading out of the air. Porch lights glowed. Sprinklers clicked on somewhere down the block. A dog barked once, then quit. A few neighbors gave me cautious little waves. Respectful now. Curious, too. Like they were trying to decide whether to ask questions or just leave well enough alone. I gave a small nod back. I didn't know them the whole story. Most people don't need the whole story. Sometimes all they really need is the reminder. Things are not always what they seem. That includes danger. That includes power. That includes people. The loudest person at your door may be the weakest one there. The quietest man on the street may be the one you should have left alone. And the people who count on fear usually fall apart the second fear stops working. I thought about Miller's face when he saw the badge. Not because I enjoyed humiliating him, though I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a little satisfaction there, but because in that one look, you could see his whole world collapse. He had shown up believing he was a hunter. He left in cuffs, finding out he'd knocked on the wrong door and picked the wrong prey. There's a certain kind of justice in that. Clean, quick, undeniable. I finished my water, looked once more down the quiet street, and headed back inside. My motorcycle was still sitting in the garage under that single light, half polished, patient as ever. The peace I'd had before the pounding started wasn't the same peace I felt now. This one was sharper. Earned. The house was secure. The lie had been dragged into the light. Order had come back. Not because it arrived on its own, but because somebody held the line when it mattered. And maybe that's the part that sticks with me most. Not that two idiots in fake uniforms got arrested on my porch. Not even that the whole neighborhood saw it. It's that people like that count on hesitation. They count on you doubting yourself, doubting your rights, doubting the little voice in your gut that says something about this is wrong. The second you stop doubting that voice, their power starts bleeding out. So yeah, by the end of the night, Meadow Creek got its piece back. Those two clowns got a ride in the back of a cruiser, and I got to go back to the garage and finish cleaning my bike. Not a bad ending. But I'm curious what you think. When somebody abuses fake authority to intimidate people, do you believe the punishment should only fit the crime, or should it also account for the fear they were trying to spread? And have you ever had a moment where someone thought you were easy to push around, right up until they realized they'd made a very bad mistake?